Half his face is scarred, half his beard is missing.
The act of shaving is also an act of hiding. Few people reached out to me and thanked me for the half a beard.
Behind that half-shaved reflection lies a whole new truth about pain, acceptance, and the human mind.
Mental health is tougher, you can't always tell.
Today, behavioral scientist Dan Ariely reveals how a brutal accident transformed not just his skin, but his soul, and why hiding our wounds might be the very thing holding us back.
People who have trauma basically spend a tremendous amount of mental energy trying to suppress.
Get ready to question everything you know about courage, healing, and the psychology of being human.
The human mind is the ancient Swiss Army knife. Our mind, just as fragile as our body, if not more.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin.
Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Dan Ariely. He is the founder of the Center for Advanced Hindsight, which is a really interesting name for an organization. I'm sure we'll get into that. And we're here to talk about behavioral economics. So he's an economist, and we're going to talk about how emotions, feelings, mental health all play a role. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. And maybe as a way to start the conversation, if it's okay, I'll explain why I have half a beard.
Great. Yeah, start there. Because I'm sure people, for those of you that are not watching along, yes, half of his face is shaved and half is a beard.
So not exactly shaved, but yes. So so this half a beard has three reasons, and some of them are connected to social science. So the first reason for this half a beard is that many years ago I was badly burned, and most of my body is covered with scars, including the right side of my face. So the right side of my face, just hair doesn't grow. That's how scars are, but most of my body is covered with scars. But of course, I could shave, and when I shave, I look less strange. And so why don't I shave? So for many years, I shaved, trying to look less strange. And then a few years ago, I went on a month-long hike, and during that month, I didn't shave, and I got a half a beard at the end of it. And I look in the mirror for the first time, and I didn't like this look. If you're looking at me for the first time, it's a very strange look. It was very strange for me. And I was kind of sure I'll shave it off. But I said I'll shave it off in a few weeks. It took me a month to grow it. I will probably never do it again. and decided to keep it for a few weeks. And then the first surprising thing happened. The first surprising thing was that a few people reached out to me and thanked me for the half a beard. For example, there's a woman who lives across the street from me. She left a note in my mailbox thanking me for the half a beard. She herself is a burn victim as well. She has a burn on her arm, and she said she always wore a long sleeve shirt. She always tried to conceal her scars, and she said that now that I look like I'm so much okay with it and kind of so out there with my injury, she would try that as well. And I got notes like this from other people. So I said, okay, if it's helping some people feel less ashamed or concealing their injuries, I'll keep this half a beard for a bit longer. But then the real strange thing happened about 4 months down the line, where 4 months down the line, I felt better about my injury. I didn't feel as bad about my injury. It's always like me and my injury, and we're fighting. And all of a sudden, I felt like it was just part of the story of my life. And it wasn't just about the face. It was about my hands, my legs, lots of other parts. And I thought to myself, why now? Why am I all of a sudden feel less confrontational with my injury, more with a high level of acceptance? And I thought back to all of these people who wrote me, thank you. And I said, that's what I was doing. I was waking up in the morning. This side was smooth. This side was stubble. And the act of shaving is also an act of hiding. And in fact, stopping that was incredibly, incredibly helpful. And when I was in hospital, there was a physician who wanted to tattoo the right side of my face with stubble to fit the left side. of my face, because I think so much of the common wisdom is about hiding. But in fact, stopping hiding was incredibly helpful. Now, that for me is kind of the role of social science, is to find out the half a beards out there. Like, what are the things that we think are not good for us, but are actually good for us. Now, you can ask lots of questions, like, could I have done it 20 years earlier? Stop shading. I'm not sure. But what I can tell you is that my intuition was that my best life will be a life in which I hide my injury. And it turns out it was much better to stay. It's not, it doesn't have a cost. People laugh, kids ask questions, people point, but overall, it's better to not hide and accept.
Yeah, when people ask, I'm curious, like, do you dive into the story about the injury and the burn? Or, like, how much do you share to the, bystander on the street?
So first of all, when people say something, I I always I always want to be polite and respectful. Um, and I also don't think just about me. I think about all the people who are different in some way. So I usually say something that kind of say, this half a beard has a story. It's because I'm injured on this side, but it's actually it's been a journey of self acceptance. And sometimes I even say to people, and when people ask me about it in a nice way, it's a wonderful thing. And it's kind of, I think about the social utility of the people who are injured. Like, kind of, we want to normalize being okay with being different. Now, mental health is tougher. Mental health is tougher in many ways, but the first way in which mental health is tougher is you can't always tell. So, there's lots of things that I can get help with. People see that my hand is not functioning well. People see all kinds of things like that. With mental health, it's tougher. But the other thing with mental health is that if you and I were sitting next to each other, I would see your hand and I would see my hand, and my hand doesn't have much movement. And the difference between my hand and your hand would become very much apparent. With mental health, we are in our own world. How do we know what somebody else is experiencing? It's impossible. So it's impossible for other people to know what we're experiencing. It's important. Isn't impossible for us to self-diagnose and say, oh, something is not is not working. You can say, oh, I remember myself from 10 years ago, but our memory is not that good. And it's not as easy as saying, I can see my hand and I can see how it's different than yours, and I can infer that I have some specific challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also with like, different physical and mental health, I think with physical health, especially an injury, right? It's like you were a victim, right? I mean, this is like probably a rant. I don't know the story, but I imagine it's not something you planned to do, right? Whereas I think with mental health, I think people can often, they don't see it as an illness. They'll see it as, oh, you're just lazy or you're not trying hard enough or you're a coward, right? I think people attribute blame to mental symptoms. Whereas I think with physical injury symptoms, there's a lot more grace, right? Understandably, right? Because it's an injury.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things with diabetes and so on that people
Mhm.
have uh, blame, but in general, um, people can tell you, oh, it's only in your head. Nobody says it's only
Right.
in your hand.
Right. Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, no one says you're making it up, right? When you have scars, it's very clear.
Or just have some willpower. Your hand will get better. The mind is much more mysterious than our physical body, and it's a challenge, which is why I think one of the reasons that mental health has been such an orphan child of medicine is that we can't simulate it. We can't. If you think about empathy, how does empathy work? We don't really feel the other person. We're not able to do that. But if you stab your toe, I have a neuron that I remember stabbing my toe, and my neurons are hitting the way I was stabbed my toe, not the way you do. So if you have something physical, I can simulate it. I had burns. Hopefully, you didn't have extensive burns, but you can simulate something small related to that. With mental issues, there's almost no way for somebody to simulate that. So the empathy is very, very low because there's just a barrier. Like, how do I simulate depression? Like what exactly? And certainly it's not evoked. Like, I see you stabbing your toe, it's evoking the mirror neurons. I see somebody who tells me they stabbed their toe, it doesn't work. I see somebody who told me that they're feeling depressed, it doesn't stimulate any neural activity. So we do have a hard time, which means I think that our role in normalizing and helping thinking about this is important. I'll tell you one other thing, which is that I do a lot of research on motivation in the workplace, and we did a study with a big consulting company in Europe, and we asked people, how many of you have an official diagnosis of some kind of neurodiversity? Everything. We then asked them what, but and slightly less than 25% of the people said they have a diagnosis, all the way from ADHD to autism. And then we asked people, and how many of you, of the people who don't have an official diagnosis, think that if you went to be diagnosed, you would get a diagnosis? And slightly more than 25% of the people said they could get a diagnosis. So if you think about it, about 50% of the people eventually said they have some kind of neurodiversity. Now, the thing about that study was that we also showed that they were less happy at the workplace. And I think the reason they were less happy at the workplace is that we don't yet understand what are the adjustments that will be useful. So for me, with a physical disability, I can't type very well. Okay. And my workplace knows, and there's technology and all kinds of things to help me do that. But if somebody has bipolar, what exactly are the workplace accommodation? We don't understand it yet. Now, I think we need to move there and to understand it and so on. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? I think it's a really interesting point. I'm curious if you have more thoughts on what a creative solution might look like, right? Because yeah, like I think what they do now is from a very disability standpoint. You get maybe more time off, maybe you work limited hours. Hopefully your company has good mental health benefits. But I'm curious, like if you could really redesign a workplace with bipolar in mind, right, or redesign a workplace with ADHD in mind, like how could you actually help these people to not just thrive, but really like showcase their genius? Because some of them are extremely, extremely intelligent and very productive in certain settings. Rather than just like saying, "Hey, work less and, here's some benefits. Go deal with it outside of work?"
So I'll give you an example of one person that I helped that is bipolar, and he was on a company trip. He was on the high side of being a bipolar, and he met a woman. They were on a site visit in another site, and he met a woman, and they were both in the kitchen, and cultural differences, and he said some things that was inappropriate in her world, but in his world, bipolar plus cultural was okay. But there was a very substantial misunderstanding, and things started going the wrong way. A complaint to HR and so on. His CEO took him out of there and had a big discussion about this. And then lots of things came up as well because it wasn't just there. Um, Now, luckily, I knew the guy before, and I could intervene. And the final solution for this idea was, so the social issues were the social issues, but the non-social issues were that when he was in a team during a time that he was down, he was a bottleneck. And when he was up, everybody else was the bottleneck. But his speed and cadence was just on a very different scale than anybody else. So eventually his CEO, and I have to say congratulations to his CEO, agreed to put him on a special mission as a one-person team. So this way, other people were not the bottleneck and he was not the bottleneck. Now, there's a limit to how many solutions like that you can make, but it's an example of somebody who is, on average, unbelievably creative, productive, and so on. But the fluctuations just don't fit with other people. The solution they came up with, agreed to, was to just make him less, other people less depend on him, and he is less dependent on other people. Now, there must be other solutions out there and better solutions out there, but we need to start creating a list of those.
Yeah, well, and looking for solutions instead of like, I think quietly firing people with mental illness. I think that also happens where they get kind of slowly pushed out of an organization, you know.
And ADHD, by the way, the a lot of people who have PTSD end up having something that looks like ADHD. So people who have trauma basically spend a tremendous amount of mental energy trying to suppress the trauma, and it comes out as ADHD. It comes out as anger attacks, all kinds of things. But the solutions there need to be to deal with the trauma, and just the ADHD is not enough in that particular case. The people that have ADHD, there are good ways, like cubicles, for example, is not the right environment. A headset that are noise canceling uh, can do a lot. Thinking differently about meetings. I mean, there's lots of ways to think and help about this. And then I don't know if you know, but length of shifts is very important, right? How long can you focus, and what kind of downtime do you need? I think we could all think about it in a more thoughtful way.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show.
Yeah. And I think we're going in that direction. I mean, I had a guest on earlier that talked about neurodiversity in schools, and talked about some of the creative private schools. Fortunately, not probably, it's not in public schools yet, but private schools that are doing things like, having a lot of standing desks or desks that have like kind of a wedge where they can prop their feet up or move around, or fidget spinners in the classrooms, or obstacle courses instead of punishment, right? You go in and you just get your energy out, right? Versus sitting in timeout, right? Because someone that has ADHD, timeout is not a good option, but if they can go run a lap, they're going to end up being a lot better. So I hope that turns into workplace, that it catches up as those kids get older and I think ask for more accommodations. I think we could actually have a more productive workforce, right? If we're harnessing people's special, like powers in a way, harnessing their uniqueness.
So it is true at the level of the individual, and it's true at the level of society. I think that I'm part of a little educational system called the inclusive education system, and what we do is we take we don't think that it's a good idea for kids with special needs to be in a school off by themselves. Some kids have to, and we're not, or not have to, but we're not able to accommodate them yet. Um, but so we try to create classroom where a third of the kids are defined as special needs, and the idea is that gives permission to treat everybody as a special need kid, right? Everybody has their own uh, issues. Everybody has their own individually tailored education program, and and the idea is to think about our strength in our communal ability, and not the individual ability. So when you say, okay, what can a classroom do if they have kids with very different perspectives, skills, and so on. And the same thing can be said about the workplace. So it's not just about the individual. And you say, okay, the individual needs particular particular help. It's a look at the society that says, can we gain from our differences?
Yeah, it makes me think, as we're having this conversation about neurodiversity, and about your injury, it's the idea of like, what is normal? How do we define normal? How do we define well? Because I think you're right. Like, I think as society is evolving, we're getting more and more individualized and more like everyone's special needs, right? Like everybody has something that needs some level of accommodation or could be optimized. But this idea of normal has just pervaded in social science and psychology for forever.
Yeah, I think in 20 years from now, medicine would be personalized. They wouldn't. Even vaccines will be different for different people. But
I think, yeah, I think with
yeah,
AI, we're gonna get to a place where everything will be hyper personalized because
yeah,
something can spend a lot of time with you, right? It gets to know you on that level.
yeah. But I do think that it's a lot of it is about the non-flexibility of systems. So if I create a school and it needs to have chairs and teachers and so on, and I'm trying to create it, um, I need to understand what's the average response, right? It comes from the perspective of I need to create eventually. Let's say I need to create a computer. I need to create a keyboard, and keyboards need to be the same for all people in the terms of the key layout. Let's create something that works. But yeah, we will get to better things. Some things will be slower than others. The other thing is that there are journeys that are just ours, and kind of we have to figure out our own unique version of how to deal with this. So I had a lot of pain for many years. I still do, not as bad as it used to be. And people have different sorts of pain. Mine was mostly physical, mostly from taking off bandages and treatments. And I kind of developed my own approach to dealing with that. So I had I tried to create like three personalities. I had the personality that was experiencing the pain. I couldn't avoid that. There was pain. And then I tried to create another role for myself, which was observing the pain. So saying to myself, "Oh, interesting. The pain is getting worse. It's getting better. It's from the surface of the skin. It's coming from deeper. It's sharper. All of a sudden." um, and then I had another kind of role in which I tried to have a little bit of control. I could ask the nurses to do things a little slower, a little faster, this part of the body first, that part. And at least to me, and I have no scientific evidence for this, but to me, this partitioning was helpful. Kind of having the experiencing self, the observing self, and the in control self was kind of partitioning the pain. So maybe 80% of the pain was still painful, but maybe 15% was taken by the observing, and maybe 5% by the control. And I keep on using the same basic approach for other things as well. So, we're experiencing, I think, a very, very tough period. So during COVID, I was very much attacked by lots of people. There were lots of people who thought that I helped bring about COVID. So
Really?
therefore, yeah, yeah, yeah. There were videos about me. I got death threats almost every day. My university had to call the authorities. And it was very tough. The beginning is like very aggressive, very angry people saying awful things in a very aggressive way. And um, and after a month of not sleeping well, and also having a lot of my mental capacity kind of taken away by something, I would try to focus, and part of it was saying, "Oh, is this ping another death threat?" And a lot of my mental capacity was kind of hijacked by this. After about a month, I decided, okay, I'm just going to go into it, and I decided to study this topic. So I went into it. I interviewed people. I even interviewed people who thought I should be executed for my crimes against humanity. Um, but my version of this was to say, okay, I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to try and understand as best as I can what's going on. How did we get? How did we get? How did we get here?
Can you speak to that a bit? Because, I think the theme of your story is universal, right? Like that idea of being courageous and really leaning into the pain. It sounds like you did that, with your injury. It sounds like you're doing that with, being canceled and, blasted online, right? It's like how do you flip that switch, or was that more of a process? Because I think as men, I think that's what differentiates us from boys to men, right? I think a man is someone that embraces that suffering and embraces the difficulty. Whereas I think a boy is someone who can run away from it and push it away. And it sounds like you've got practice in leaning in, right, instead of checking out.
So first of all, I have to admit, this is not always my approach. Uh, uh, I'm now divorced, but when I was married, this was an area that I did not embrace questions. I avoided it. It's not. It's not that I am very. There are areas of my life where I shied away from uh, embracing the challenges and trying to conquer them, and there are prices that come with it. and and I think the basic human issue is that there are very few people that say I never want to deal with it. I think most likely it's I don't want to deal with it today. Like when you say to somebody, okay, your boss doesn't understand that you have this issue, but if you want to be successful in this company, you have to explain to them something very unpleasant. Do you want to never explain it? People say, no, I want to explain it. How about today? How about tomorrow? I'm getting a lot of the things. It's not about not understanding the importance. A lot of things are about procrastination, and if you think about it as a problem of procrastination, it's about figuring out um, when to start acting and how to get willpower. So I would basically say it's about making an action plan, including a date. And when we don't have a concrete action plan, the odds it will be carried out is very low. So if let's say somebody wants accommodation at the workplace, and let's say it's an unpleasant discussion because you have to reveal some information about yourself and be vulnerable. I would say that the first point of action from social science is to say make make a concrete plan. Who are you going to talk to? What you're going to tell them? Say those things and this. And once you have it, pick a date. The enemy is having very vague plans that never get concrete and never get a date. And the same thing goes for other things. Um, the the other thing about being courageous. So there's lots of things working against being courageous. So in behavioral economics, we have this thing called loss aversion, where we were more afraid of negative things that were positive about positive. Now, evolutionary, why do we have this? Imagine you're in the jungle many, many years ago, and imagine something good happens to you. You hunted a deer, amazing. How good is this good thing? It's all good. Maybe you get to live for another week, another 2 weeks. Let's say something bad happens to you. A tiger hunts you down. How bad is that? Really bad. So, so that's right. So in nature, in the environment we evolutionally grew up, good things were sort of okay, good. Bad things were terrible. So what would an algorithm do in that world? It would be really, really sensitive to the downside. So we became very downside averse. We focus a lot on all the bad things would happen, right? If you simulate a discussion with your boss, we're simulating all the bad things that could happen. We don't simulate all the wonderful things that can happen. So it's a it's a strategy that we understand evolutionary why it happened, but it's not serving us well. The other thing that is interesting is that when we as a society lived in a small community, let's say 200 people, gossip was a good thing. Why was gossip a good thing? Imagine that you're thinking about taking my apple and you look bigger and stronger than I am, so you could probably take my apple. We don't have police force. We don't have a judicial system. We're kind of an ancient society. What can I do against you? Gossip. If I tell everybody this helps me out, but more importantly, if you think I will tell people, and if you think people would care, you would not take my apple from the beginning. So gossip is this really interesting idea where it creates deterrence. Think about how many bad things would happen if there was no gossip. So it's kind of a really good mechanism to reinforce good behavior and to take away bad behavior. More to take away bad behavior. Now, we don't live in a 200 people community anymore. And the people that we gossip about will never interact with us anyway. It's not about fixing their behavior. It's not about deterring their behavior, but we still have this unbelievable sensitivity to gossip. We love gossip. We spread gossip. We do all of these things. Right now, it's not serving us as well. So so with all of these things being built against taking risks, the question is, how do we help ourselves take risk? And everybody who has any kind of issue, physical, mental, and so on, the easiest thing is to be unnoticed. The easiest thing is to be unnoticed. Anything that you do differently, you look differently, you dress differently, you talk differently, you ask for different things, and so on, um, is potentially risky. People can gossip and so on. So how can we fix it? What can we do? So there are lots of things that we can do, but I'll just give you two. The first one is we should start by practicing little things. I think that we should start by practicing little acts of sharing and basically kind of test the water. Like, maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought. Maybe people reacted as positive. Sometimes in our mind, we are really afraid of the downside. What if we got to experience and it wasn't so much downside? So I think experiencing more risk-taking behavior is important. Now, should you go straight to your boss? No, but share with a couple of people, test the water. The other thing is to think about life as a portfolio. So Paul Samuelson, the famous economist, had this example. He died many years ago. He came to one of his colleagues in the economics department, and he says, "I have a coin. I'll flip it. If it's heads, I'll give you $1,200." He used lower numbers, but with inflation, we'll make it higher. So if it's heads, I'll give you $1,200. If it's tails, you'll give me $1,000. He said, "Do you want to play?" And his colleague said, "Look, I understand that $1,200 is more than 1,000. I understand the expected value is positive, but if I win $1,200, I'll be slightly happy. If I lose $1,000, I'll be really miserable. So this is loss aversion. I don't want to play. I'll keep on thinking, why did I take this bet? Why did I don't want to play. And then Samuelson says, what if we play this game 1,000 times? And his friend said, 1,000 times? Of course I'm playing. No, what a question. And then Samuelson says, look what you're telling me. You're telling me that if I came to you every day and every day asked you if you wanted to play these bets, every day you would say no. I would say, 1,000, yes, it's better, but I don't want to lose. At the end of 3 years, at the end of 1,000 times, you would say, what an idiot I've been. I did not think correctly about risk. I should have taken this bet. Now, life doesn't give us the same bet every day. Life gives us different bets every day. But the point is that if we think about one bet at a time, we will often be very afraid of the downside and often not take the risk. But if we ask the question of how do we want to live? What kind of life do we want? Right? Do we want a life? Let's use intimate relationship as an example. You say, do I want to live a life in which every day I think to myself, I wish things would be slightly different, and you don't say it? Like, let's think about life. Like, how would I look 30 years from now on a life and said, I didn't take this risk in each of was this correct? So the Samuelson's approach is to basically say, we are so tempted to think about risks as one at a time, but to make better decisions, we should understand that we have lots of risks, and we should say, what kind of life do we want? And if we say, no, I don't want to live a life when this is happening for 30 years, then you say, okay, so then let me take a different decision right now.
Yeah, would you say, I mean, I think that's very eloquently said. I love that example. I wonder, like, with this and other, cognitive fallacy, I think of, like, sunk cost fallacy. Is there something where humans are, like, inherently risk avoidant, right? What you're saying, or like inherently maybe cowardly, to use a strong word, or, like conservative, maybe is a better word. But what I'm hearing is, like, I think the modern man and the modern person needs to, like, hack the system, right? You said, like, do these kind of cognitive overrides to live a more bold life. Would you agree with that, or what would you say on that topic?
Yeah, I very much agree. So my metaphor for the human mind is that the human mind is the ancient Swiss Army knife. What do I mean by that? So let's start with the Swiss Army knife part. The Swiss Army knife is not particularly good at anything. There's not a single task that you say, oh, I need scissors. Let me go to the Swiss Army knife. I need a can opener. No, it's okay in lots of things. It's not particularly excellent in anything. Kind of like our mind. And much like our mind, it's compact and we can carry it with us, which is a wonderful feature of our brain. We can take it with us. So it's a collection of sort of reasonable tools for lots of things. None of them is really excellent for almost anything. But our Swiss Army knife is ancient. It was designed with tools for a very different environment than the one we deal with. It wasn't designed, for example, we don't have a tool to split our attention when we drive and use our phones. We don't have the tools to deal with cryptocurrency, to deal with 30 years after retirement, to deal with complex healthcare issue, to deal with statistics. We don't have of these tools. So now the question is, what do we do? Now, the interesting thing is that when it comes to our physical body, we understand we're limited. Even people who are, have perfect physique are limited. They need planes, and they need air conditioning, and they need sweaters, and and like, nobody says I'm like Superman. No, everybody recognize that our bodies, everybody's body is fragile, and we need a lot of a technological envelope around our physical body to make us perform better. And with it, we're amazing. We can fly. We can, stay in the cold, in the dark. We can do all kinds of things. Our minds are just as fragile as our body, if not more. What are we assuming about our mind? If we're assuming that it's perfectly capable, then I think it's just as crazy as assuming that our bodies are like Superman. But if we understand the exact places where we get things wrong, now you can start fixing it. And here I would like to kind of get you to think about two metaphors. One metaphor is the car. Every year, cars get better. How do they get better? They get better by analyzing how lousy drivers we are and protecting us against killing ourselves and other people. Anti-lock brakes, rear view mirror, seat belts, little flashing lights on the side. My car, if you get off the lane, it corrects you. There's all kind of things. The cars are a technology that understand human fallibility and tries to fix it. On the other hand, we have social media. Social media also gets better every year. Social media also understand human fallibility, but social media every year understand human fallibility in order to take more advantage of us. So we and cars together do better. We and social media together do do worse. So where do we want to be on this scale between cars and social media? Uh, I'm hoping that we will develop technology. For example, think about payment technology. Is payment technology getting us to make smarter decisions or to spend more? It's leaning on the side of spending more. But you can see how it could do better, right? How it could be better. So I think kind of we're not alone. We have technology, and the question is, we and technology together, how would we be? And I think that in a broad way, I think the workplace is technology. It doesn't have to be, a cell phone. Like technology is an organizational structure. Like, is the workplace environment going to get the better of us or the worse of us? Our schools, it's a technology. The legal system is a technology. So all of those things, how do we design them with an eye toward our fallibility, and how design them better?
Yeah, it makes you think just it's like ethics, right? Which I think is like lacking with how rapidly these technologies are forming. But that's what I'm hearing you really talk about is like, what is the ethic behind, the legal system or the workplace or social media, right? Like, are there people that are considering researchers like yourself, right? Or at this point, pretty well known theories, right? I mean, these things are not proven as much as you can in social science, right? But they're pretty well supported. But it's things I think they ignore, right? For profit or for more engagement or for whatever.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
That's right. There's lots of places that we haven't caught with regulation to what we're creating. um, and it's not just technology. It's lots of other things. So, for example, um, resilience. Resilience is, for me, the buffer that helps us deal with the stress of the world and not feel it. And you think, okay, here's the stress of the world, resilience, the stress we feel. And if we have high resilience, we're better able to deal with it. Resilience is going down. Why is it going down? We have less friends, right? People spend more time with their nuclear family over the last 4 decades and spend more time with their nuclear family, but less time with friends. You remember the movies, right? The men coming from the mine or from the factory and go to the pub. That's where resilience is being created. Women were doing their own thing in a social gathering. We have less of that. Now we, supervise our kids doing homework and we drive them to different places. It has a function, but it's not resilience building. We don't have as many work friends anymore. COVID, of course, took a huge dent in work friends. And people talk about getting back to work. You can physically go back to work, but if you don't like anymore anybody who's working there, or you don't even know them, it will take a really long time to really get back to work. Like not the physical presence, but to feel the camaraderie and the joy and the and so on. So also, we're kind of not allowed to talk about at work about lots of things. Certainly not sexual issues. Um, Here we have like, even if you're married and your spouse comes to see you, they have some kind of law against kissing them in public because it creates a hostile work environment. We are encouraged not to talk about politics. So how much friends can you get? And then another really interesting but sad result is that as income inequality increases, we have less resilience. Why? Because we feel less together, and we're less likely to ask for help from other people. Of course, there's not trust in government and so on. So we're in a kind of a tough period when we're kind of alone. Social pressures are very negative, and we really need to figure out what is it that we do to get our resilience up here. And it's so we can try and spend time with friends. By the way, you can't just go to your friends and say, please give me resilience. But the good news is, if you create resilience for your friend, it would also create one for you. But people are sitting there and saying, how do I want to spend today? Do I want to go for a walk with a friend? It will take too much time. Maybe it will be boring. Let me not take this risk. But eventually, it's good for the long term, not just for the short term.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, since you're studying these trends at the macro level, like, how do we get here? I think, like, I don't think it's like a conspiracy personally, right? I don't think it's like, the billionaires are plotting and scheming. Maybe you know more than I do, but I do think it's like a lot of little factors, right, that are all contributing to this sense of disconnection, isolation, individualization. And I do hear you. Like, it just seems like it's at a breaking point, or at least I guess I hope it's at a breaking point in some way. That we're in like the shadow before the light. But I'm curious your take on that.
I think a lot of it is coming from our intuitions about efficiency. And I'll give you kind of a strange story. So when I was in hospital, for the first 4 months, I didn't eat. I had a tube down my nose into my stomach, 30 eggs a day, 7,000 calories a day, trying to help the body build tissue. I lost weight on that diet, by the way. Anyway, so 4 months I'm on this tube, and then they come one day and they say, the day after tomorrow we'll take it off. And what do you think was my reaction? I said, please keep it on, keep it in. I said, who wants to eat? Like, it's so efficient. It's not just the food just comes in. There's no chewing. All of this thing. What? And I said, look, I'm telling you, in the future, nobody will eat. We will take these pills. We will do things. I don't think anybody would walk around with a tube. But like, where's this eating coming from? I said, my wisdom of not eating for 4 months, I can tell you, it's a waste of human time and activity. Anyway, they were the doctors. I was the patient. They were decided what to do. I started eating, and guess what? I remember that food tastes really good. Now, so I haven't stopped since. But for me, this is an example of efficiency over humanity. At the end of the day, enjoying the taste of something is a part of the human experience. It's an unbelievable experience. But when we think about life, we often think about the cognitive efficiency. Who wants to chew? So when companies look at back to the office, they said, "Oh, let's save on driving time," and people would get their own coffee. And on Zoom, meetings always start on time and always end on time. And the fact that meetings on Zoom always start on time and end on time, where's the time coming from? Like what is not happening? What's not happening is chit chat. What's not happening is getting to know the other people, to know their social issues, to know who to help. So, so I think that in the name of efficiency, we're doing lots of things that are not good for us in the long term. Um, I'll give you one funny example. There's a study. I love this study. They look at videos of people who go to like cocktail parties, not like to meet each other, like a mingling or kind of a thing. And what they notice is that almost everybody, when they shake the hand of a new person, in the next few minutes they bring their hand to their nose and they smell it. And when you tell people about this, they say, "I never do it," but most people do it. We just don't notice it. Now, the thing is, we have a very good sense of smell. Just something has to be very close to us, right? We're not like dogs that we're closer to the ground. We're not this, but we do have a very good sense of smell. And we can smell lots of things about people. For example, from smell, you can predict who is going to be good friends with you. Of course, with romantic love, right? We know how important smell is. Now, we're smelling social animals. Do we want to live in Zoom? The answer is no. No. What exactly are we missing? If I ask you, what exactly are you missing when you can't smell the people that you're interacting with? You can't tell me. You can't tell me because smell goes directly to your brain. There's no, you can't say, oh, this person, I trust them because I smell. No. But we do smell. Smell can create trust and can create fear. So we're at the phase that we don't understand what makes us human. Like the deep drivers of like online dating. They give you this description of a person. Okay, we did the following study. We go to people and we say, give me the name of 20 really good friends, as many as you can get, and 20 not so good friends. And then we go to these people and we say, please fill up the online dating profile without names and without pictures. And then I come to you and I say, Mark, here's a mix of people. Please sort them out to the people you really love and the people you don't love so much. You're useless at this. Whatever people describe in an online dating site gives you zero prediction about who you would love or not love. So we describe people in terms of height and weight and religion and so on. But the way we experience people is completely different and we don't know how to describe it. So if I ask you, give me your 3 best friends and tell me what is it about them that makes you such a good friend of them. It's very hard to put. I mean, you can make up stuff because it's not necessarily what it really matters. So, kind of the way we describe things, here's an online dating catalog, is completely different from what gets us to really fall in love and care about somebody, and so on. So, I think until we get there, we need to understand that we are too much in the world of easy descriptions and efficiency.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, kind of to tie these things together, like we're not recognizing our animal or primal nature, right? Whether that be the limitations, like you're saying with the cognitive fallacies, right? Or with the way that we do interact, right? Some of our less tangible senses like smell or vibes, right? Or pheromones or whatever it is. Like it does sound like we're just over indexing on, like you're saying, the cerebral, the efficient, and the effective, which is only one very narrow band of human experience, right?
That's right. And when we have a system that had a long time to evolve, like the workplace, people come to work and so on, you can say, okay, it learns something over time. But when we try to engineer it from scratch, okay, let's do a work from home environment. We don't even know what are the things that we're missing.
Is that some of the work that you're doing? Are you trying to study what those factors are, or how do you even, yeah, quantify that?
I'm spending a lot of time on motivation at that. So to the degree that this comes in is that. And my biggest project right now is to think about the last chapter of people's lives. So I'm thinking about the time from when people get a terminal illness diagnosis until the time they pass away. It's on average in the Western world slightly longer than 5 years. So it's a long chapter. And I'm trying to analyze all the mistakes that people make in this chapter and what can we do to reduce some of those. So, for example, about the end, about 80% of the people say they want to die at home. Only about 20% gets to die at home. Ends up that solving social problems, strange brother and so on, is incredibly important for people at the end of life, but people don't do it enough. People become patients as their role when they're being told that they have a terminal illness instead of being a person with an illness. So lots of things like that we're trying to figure out how we can fix.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I wish we had more time. I'd love to have you come back on the show. Maybe if you read a book or something about that, we should definitely chat about it, because I think that is clearly like a very neglected part, especially in Western civilization, right? We just don't have those structures that it seems like other cultures have baked in. We've, for whatever reason, like just eliminate them, or institutionalize them instead of having multi-generational family homes, for instance.
That's absolutely right. I will say one thing about this is, when people get a terminal illness diagnosis, under the right circumstances, with the right help and support and so on, it can be kind of the best midlife crisis there is. When people have a midlife crisis at age 40 or 50, it's kind of a midlife crisis. People say, how did I get here? Is this what I wanted? And so on. But they don't know how long their future is. So they say, okay, I don't like this. There's lots of things I want to change, but I don't think I can make the changes. So lots of people end up having a sort of midlife crisis, but not a really good one. When people get a terminal illness diagnosis, then they have the opportunity to have a real successful, we'll call it midlife crisis. It's not, but a real successful examination. And if they have 5 years ahead of them, an opportunity to fix things. And so the good news from all of this research is that the last chapter of life can be very good for people. Not the last few months, but the last chapter in life. And only about 6 to 7% of the people die quickly. Most of us will have some time. So it can be very good. It's kind of a shame we don't do it earlier, but we can do it well. That's kind of the good news. The bad news is we need lots of help to get there.
Yeah. What do you think we were saying before about procrastination, right? Like once you have a time frame and you have a date, I think it does break through some of those fallacies and limitations that our brain puts out, right? It's like, oh, wow, this is happening, 5 years to live or whatever it is. But yeah, Dan, I've really enjoyed this conversation. As we're wrapping up, like, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and your work?
So I have a website, Dan Ariely, DANARIELY.com. That's probably the best place to do this. I also have a website where I complain about bureaucracy, called the Center for Advanced Bureaucracy, but the best place is my website.
Great. Yeah, and listeners, both of those will be in the show notes, so feel free to check out Dan and his work. It is quite fascinating stuff. So thanks again for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Very nice to meet you.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, do all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe. You know what to do by now. Send to somebody that maybe is stuck in one of these cognitive fallacies or needs, some science to help them shake through some of the limitations of the human body and brain. Looking forward to having him back on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Men's Therapy Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.